quit. All right, I have no idea where my preview window went. I'm going live. Here we go. All right. Oh, so interesting. I'll tell you what, you guys probably seen like 50 different views, and we may have went live like a second earlier or not, and I will explain to you why. So first of all, welcome to Cyber Social Hub in our Hubcasts. And the reason it's a little bit more chaotic than normal, number one, is I've been on the road for 2 weeks at some phenomenal shows, and they've just been really, really awesome. And I've been traveling around, so deprived sleep if you've ever been traveling around. And I attempted to click this button in the software that we use here to kind of see who's all viewing and kind of chat ahead of time and whatnot. And why it's so different this time is because of this. We're broadcasting to no, not to Facebook. So there is no Facebook in there. Wipe that off there because I opted in last second not to get rid of that one. So let me just boom, there, gone. No Facebook. So we're not broadcasting to Facebook right now, but we are broadcasting into 2 different Twitter accounts, which is my personal account and to Cyber Social Hubs. We are broadcasting to LinkedIn, and of course, where we always go, into YouTube as well. So anyway, welcome everyone to the chaos known as Friday. You've made it, by the way. So congratulations for that. And I see a bunch of you guys here. So hello, welcome. Yeah, I was at Osmosis Con, absolutely, and that was pretty awesome. Going down there, that was my second one live I attended, and it was really, really good. So yeah, that's where we're at. So anyway. Oh, interesting session. So like I said, we're broadcasting out to multiple. So hopefully that I'm watching my Slack chat over here, in Megan, who you guys all know, like from behind the scenes. You see her in there in the chat there, is monitoring some of the multi-different ones because we've never done more than 2. I think we tested it a little bit when we tried when we were at in San Diego. I actually broadcast to a couple while I was sitting in a Starbucks. So anyway, hopefully it all goes well. Hey, I want to tell you guys also about something that's coming up. We don't have the links quite live yet, but now that all the other conferences are done that I'm going to, I want to talk to you guys about Cyber Social Con. So that's our conference. It's completely and 100% online. And better than that, it is 100% free for you. So we have some really great speakers lined up for the event. So we'll be putting that page live here pretty soon. And it's going to be, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong here, which is very likely. We're looking at December 14th and 15th. And we used to spread this out over 3 days and kind of give an hour break in between because we know work has to happen in there somewhere as well. But it's December 14th and 15th. I don't know that there's much work going to be happening in that time frame. But so literally, that's all it is. It's jam-packed, all back-to-back, 14th and 15th. And obviously, it's recorded too, so you can go back and catch the sessions that you weren't able to see, or maybe some of them that you just aren't interested in. But you can check those out. Yep. Hey, thank you, Megan. She says, correct. That is going to be December 15th, or 14th and 15th there. Let me move her up here above my head for this screen. There we go. Yep. And Megan, yes, you will be doing all the work. Thank you. I appreciate you very much, by the way, too. Here, let's just get that. There we go. Yeah, it says Megan, she'll be doing all the work. Yeah, and she's not wrong about that. All right. So let's get into today's show. First, wait. Before I do that, I got to talk about the 2 shows I was at. Techno Security San Diego. You guys probably saw that. We actually broadcast live from that. Those are always chaotic, trying to broadcast live at the shows. They had us in the showroom floor, which was great. Oh my gosh. Thank you to Jennifer, Allison, and the whole staff there at Techno San Diego. It was freaking awesome. Man, I had so much fun there. Got to meet some new folks we had onto the show for the very first time. I had not even seen them at one of the techno conferences before. We grabbed those guys on there. Great time. Not much sleep at those events because, you start super early for breakfast, get ready to go, and then meeting with people, getting to know people. And yeah, I mean, it's just great. And then we didn't broadcast from Osmosis Con because we were just a low-level sponsor there because we were responsible for taking Cynthia Hetherington's event live, right? So obviously we have technology that pushes stuff live everywhere, right? So we were doing that for her show as well, which, man, I tell you what, you talk about an awesomely produced conference. For being live and produced, it's awesome. It's a single track OSINT conference, right? From beginning to end. And literally it just goes boom, boom. They play this music, awesome music between it. They had camera crews there, which were feeding us their feed, and we could kick it out on Osmosis Con. If you guys are interested in it, it's just osmosiscon.com. Man, it was just awesome. So much fun. But now I got to get back to work and do some hubcasts. So with that, hold on. I got to find the right button because I'm going to limit my mistakes from here out. I realized we went live a little early here. There he is. We're pulling on Jason Covey. Is that right? Covey.
Covey.
See, dang it. See, I even wrote it down, but I didn't write it phonetically on the O part. But, it's Friday, and it's going to be one of those days, man. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. When it comes to Friday, a motto that I have that comes to mind is that stumbling across the finish line is still finishing.
That is absolutely accurate. It is, even if you have to crawl or someone's dragging you across. I guess as long as you cross it, it's technically there.
Yes.
Now, people are probably wondering because hopefully they saw the title of this. If not, they're in for a big surprise here. They saw this and they said it says Vound eDiscovery, but underneath your tag it says Haystack ID. So what do you do there at Haystack ID?
So at Haystack, my title is M365 eDiscovery Consultant. So I'm kind of I'm under our client services group at Haystack, and I'm kind of in kind of a technical consultant role. They said they wanted someone kind of half technical, half consulting to be able to deal with the emerging questions that are all things M365 eDiscovery.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of focusing on, providing guidance and a number of services to corporate law departments as well as some large law firms, and just addressing kind of the totality of the eDiscovery capabilities of M365 as well as its unique data types, the constant changes, and applying, working with other team members at Haystack, applying that technology to like their real world scenarios in legal departments and law firms.
Very cool, man. That sounds like a big responsibility. I don't know.
It does. It's actually kind of scary now that I said it out loud.
Yeah, you scared me a little. Well, hey, welcome to the show too, by the way. And thanks for taking the time out. I know you're taking the time out of your own busy schedule and dealing with that really awesome title that you have there. And coming on our little, we call this the really bad late night talk show that we just happen to do during the middle of the day. And it's just our little piece of the digital forensic, cybersecurity, eDiscovery world that we've carved out. But today we're going to talk a little bit about some of that process and some of that how investigations differ than eDiscovery, because a lot of our listeners are investigators, and they could be moving over to the private sector, right? And a lot of former law enforcement will move over to your neck of the woods, and that's a really big difference in workflows. Really, I mean, not huge. There are a lot of similarities as well, but some big difference, and we're gonna talk about a little bit of those and how those workflows are similar yet different, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Very good. I'm going to pull up my show notes here so I don't lose track of them. And we're going to talk a little bit specifically. You're here to talk about Our friends over at talk about them like in a bad way or anything, but our friends like that came out really wrong, but that's the way it works. At
Mhm,
Vound, right? So
mhm.
they're today's show, and we want to talk a little bit about some of their capabilities and why are you such a big fan of Vound? I guess would be my first question.
So I don't know if it was right place at the right time. I am a long time Vound software customer and user of the Intella platform, and it traces back to kind of the earlier days of eDiscovery and being in law firms at the time and struggling to transition to the period of where we're looking at giant stacks of paper our clients were sending us to where we were starting to have to deal with native format data and everything became electronic. And I was just kind of in the right place at the right time and had a little bit of a technology background working as a litigation paralegal at the time to start to deal with that. So little did I know that that was something that a lot of people in my position were going through as law firms struggled to adapt with their own internal IT not necessarily being able to service those needs and everything. And specifically to Vound and Intella, what it relates to is we had a client, a global corporation, and particularly back circa 2010, they were using Lotus Notes. So they're sending us, the client IT personnel are sending us loose NSF files to deal with, and nobody even understood what those are. Outside of the IT world that's, dealing with Domino servers and everything and has Lotus Notes email, nobody knew what that stuff was and how to deal with it. So doing some research, trying to get up to speed, looking at the problem, I just kind of stepped into the deep end and at that time found a very new, interesting looking product called Intella that happened to process loose NSF files of pretty significant size. They're typically full mailbox exports
Hmm.
at, you know, a non 6 digit plus price tag. So we just started investigating and communicating with a new company. Intel was first released in 2008, so this is like sometime 2010, 2011 era, and got my hands on the tool and just started to work with it and familiarize myself and just kind of start on a new journey. What was very interesting about Vound and Intella is that from the outset of the tool, it was all visualization based. So there's been so much, particularly in eDiscovery, about analytics and visualization in, I don't know, the mid 2010s forward, and certainly today, it's all about visualization and tools like BrainSpace. That's just kind of their calling card at this point. Vound kind of saw around the curvature of the Earth and came with that from the outset. So it has a couple core visualizations, the most famous of which is their cluster map. And what it does, and that's so unique, and I think will be relevant to this audience in that I understand we've got a lot of people working individually, like they're not necessarily part of a team, they're a solo investigator doing the work themselves. So what that visualization allows you to do is understand relationships between different parts of data. So you can be looking at a certain custodian, a certain category of file types. You can also be looking at a date range and the results of a keyword search. Then you can see where all of those data types interact, and it's all single click dynamic display of those results. So in a lot of tools, you're looking at kind of a spreadsheet style display, and it just has a flexibility that I've really yet to see in any other tool. And I've always considered it a force multiplier. So it kind of gives one person an incredible ability to do in eDiscovery what's called early case assessment or early data assessment. Um, but in the investigation work I've done, I'm a big fan of the concept of applying investigation type techniques to e-discovery projects, and those types of techniques are very parallel in my mind, and been able to get fantastic results over time doing that. And Intella has been kind of the centerpiece, um, platform with which I've been able to do that. And it's just kind of provided, I know everyone has their favorite tools, but it's just kind of provided the lens via which I view everything. And you can't help compare the way other tools work to it. And then once you've had it and gotten used to that and the power that gives one person, it's hard to forget.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So man, you were like early on with those guys.
Really was, yes.
That's pretty awesome. So you've seen the evolution of the tool and the multiple tools that they've come out with over the years. Obviously, they've kind of segmented out, and that's kind of what I want to really talk about those a little bit, and especially workflow, right? And where they kind of fall in place there as well. If you're comfortable speaking about that, which I have a feeling that you might be.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about so in the eDiscovery world, and you're going to have to just correct me whenever you hear something stupid come out of my mouth, which you can ask anyone who regularly attends this podcast. It's a lot, unfortunately, that it happens. But just correct me. I'm not that familiar with eDiscovery. Obviously, my history's in law enforcement, and when we wanted something, we'd issue a search warrant and just go after it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about a little bit about the workflow there in eDiscovery. How does a case typically start out? How does, once it comes to you and you become aware of it, what's your kind of your first steps in starting this thing?
So I suppose it kind of depends on where you are in the process. If you're working for a law firm, if you're working for a service provider like Haystack, or if if it's civil litigation, we're talking about you're probably going to be a corporate legal department. So usually there's some initiating event. It could be the filing of a lawsuit, but it could be an internal investigation. There could be an accusation of like unauthorized access, system access. There could be data exfiltration. A lot of it is employment based,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be a number of things, but it could also be the entire gamut of, a product liability lawsuit, intellectual property theft, just regular commercial litigation between businesses over business disputes. Really, the whole gamut of things are possible. But I guess where it's that initiating event in kind of one of those categories I described, where the information in eDiscovery, it's what we call anticipation of litigation occurs, and that's what triggers some of your legal obligations to engage in a practice called applying a legal hold, and that's just the requirement that data be preserved. If you have auto delete policies, whatever, they have to be suspended for um, what we call custodians. I don't love that term, but that's an e-discovery term that's here to stay. People in the IT world and maybe more investigations, we call those people users, like your user account, the person using, or an
Right.
employee. We call them their custodians in e-discovery, and I don't love that, but we are stuck with it. It's like we step bubble gum on a sidewalk, and it's just coming with us. We're never going to get it off. So I don't love that term, but it's one we have to deal with. So those custodians get put on legal hold, and that's just to make sure that nothing gets lost. That can mean everything from, if you have paper on your desk, you can't that's related to the potential dispute, that has to be preserved. But the bigger part of the industry is what we call ESI, electronically information. That's another kind of term of art and legal profession. I think other people in IT, we call that data, but it's electronically stored information, or ESI, in our world. And honestly, as I mentioned a few of these terms, for folks that are on the law enforcement side and are looking to get into a corporate environment, investigations and stuff, these are terms that they'll encounter. So I would encourage anyone that's looking at that. A great resource is the EDRM website. I believe it's edrm.net. The EDRM is called the Electronic Discovery Reference Model. And what it is, it's just a visualization of the stages of eDiscovery. There's a series of steps, and it's just kind of, it's an overlay of the steps of the process you go through in the stages in eDiscovery. We talk about EDRM stages. And then there's a representation of the volume of data at the left-hand side of the chart being very high. And then as you step through those processes and process data, deduplicate data, engage in analytics, and then search criteria, the volume of the data goes down, but increasing to the right side, the relevance of the data goes up. So that's the kind of the legal concept of evidence that supports or disputes the facts or allegations in the case. It's kind of a centerpiece of understanding eDiscovery. So that's a great place for folks to start. And then the EDRM has a lot of resources regarding the terminology. Everyone will want to talk about the EDRM. So understanding some of those, well, kind of being a person that has a foot in both camps with regard to forensics and eDiscovery, I've kind of come to see those the terminology issue being a real barrier from folks understanding each other because we kind of call the same stuff different things. It creates a lot of
Right.
confusion. It's like we just say we need to get on the same page regarding the word. It's like you've got to translate the words. Oh, because you'll be talking about the same thing and completely talking past each other. So I don't know if that's been a sweet spot for me, but I kind of see everything from both perspectives, and that's like the big barrier I see, particularly with folks in moving from the law enforcement side and getting into corporate civil litigation type of scenarios.
Wow, very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about um, so now that you become aware of the case, and I'll let you kind of just pick the case you study as to where it falls and where you're at in the case. How does one go about, like, obviously in forensics we go do and I think it's called a collection on your end,
Mhm.
and they sometimes call it that on our end as well. But we're going to get our evidence, right? We're going to pull in the data and do that. So where are the differences, and how does if you could kind of throw in maybe how those tools do it that you love so much, and kind of the highlights of those.
Yeah, so the biggest difference is kind of the um, in eDiscovery data collection, we're typically not interested in the more the thoroughness of collection that we do in forensics. We're typically not imaging hard drives. If it is an image, it's typically going to be a logical image.
Hmm.
And then within a logical image, we might focus only on email and user account or a couple specific locations. It's typically not about deleted data. It's rarely a physical image. And there are exceptions to that where forensics becomes necessary and we can proceed to those more focused techniques and capabilities, but they're not standard fare. They're the exception, and that depends on the type of case. Now if you're talking about intellectual property or data exfiltration, or like I've worked on something that comes to mind was a non-compete violation. So I've got an employee, there's allegations, it's HR related, there's
Mm-hmm.
allegations that the person was running a competing business. And so that was actually a scenario while working at the law firm. We had a modest but pretty capable forensics lab that we built in house, and was able to. That was a scenario where it was appropriate pre-litigation to leverage those tools. And I ended up uncovering, the guy is employed by like three different places. He had an exclusive contract to provide job placement services to a potential client who was really a client stolen from the law firm's client, and that's why we were investigating that. Found signed contracts, and those things ended up coming from deleted data and been exfiltrated. He had access to his Dropbox account synced to his laptop, his company laptop. So it was all there for me to find. So that's kind of the distinction there. But when we're collecting data, it's typically, and especially these days, it's enterprise data sources, and that's also a difference between eDiscovery and forensics. Again, going back to the law enforcement folks, in other than like kind of more personal cloud accounts, I can think about iCloud and Google Drive and stuff. You're typically not going to be involved with, except in like white collar criminal. You're not going to be involved with um, enterprise email systems like Microsoft Exchange, probably not dealing with SharePoint, OneDrive Online, and then the more recent proliferation of the messaging platforms, with Microsoft Teams being the dominant one of those. So the last 2 years of my life has very much been about Microsoft Teams, the unbelievable complexity of where it stores data, how it stores data, the exceptions that it makes for different contexts in which data is communicated. There is a lot to understand and a lot to a lot of missteps to be avoided. So that's part at Haystack. That's part of my interaction with our forensics group, um, because I think of what those guys are having to deal with just in trying to keep track of mobile devices, iOS releases, all the individual apps, Android, physical acquisition, jailbreaking, all the barriers, just what mobile device forensics requires someone to keep up with. And then everything that's added on top of that, then they get these new level of questions about the 365 universe. So it kind of requires specializing in these things to make sure you've got a team with the depth of expertise to cover everything. So I've kind of also assumed a bit of that role with regard to the forensics team at Haystack, and that's like a
Mhm.
really good fit for me because we do speak each other's language. And I talked about that kind of terminology barrier, so we're able to get past that and function really well as a group. So that's a lot of fun because I do miss the straight up forensics and investigation work I used to do. That was one of the things I enjoyed most. Just you don't know what's going to happen, needle in a haystack. I like making the spider web of crisscrossing and putting together the events and how they happen. So this gives me a little taste of that stuff and the interesting things they're working on, because enterprise eDiscovery can be interesting. It's not always the most exciting of things. But to get back to data collection, so we're typically looking at larger collections limited by custodians, data locations, but it's really not about deleted data. It's more whatever the operating system can see is pretty much what we're looking at. But then
Mm.
it's very much about the substance of that. And in terms of maybe we think about, terabyte hard drives being imaged. So it's maybe less overall data in terms of we don't have a terabyte of data per custodian. But when you talk about a complex matter that has 400 custodians and they've each got 25 gigs of email, we're now looking at a huge volume of data, but kind of in a different way than like large forensic images. And that's where a tool like Intella has the specialty capabilities to process that kind of data. So, folks probably encounter PST files in the course of doing their work and collecting email investigations. They're probably not typically full account exports, or probably not very often that you've had to deal with 800 gigabytes of just email, and you're talking about millions of emails. And that's where the capabilities of a tool like Intella are a little more geared toward that. What I like about them is, and I guess I'm primarily talking about the Intella desktop software at this point. We'll talk about the different flavors and how maybe this workflow goes through their products in particular. But that's where we're talking about how it deals with that data. Whereas like a forensics tool is more designed to look at individual sources, not 400 different sources, and how you manage that. So Intella has some amazing processing capability to be able to dig through that. And that's maybe, I think what I'm describing here is kind of more the corporate enterprise data sources versus more individual centric data sources.
Yeah, and so you guys have an idea. I just popped up Jason down on the screen somewhere in there. My screen's like mirrored. Anyway, it's Friday.
Yeah.
I did say that, right?
Yeah.
I threw the
Still
link in
Friday.
there. Should be clickable on YouTube. Now, one of the things I noticed, and I want to mention and take a quick sidetrack from our conversation here, is that as we're testing these multiple platform things that we're broadcasting to, it seems that I can only see things that are as we shoot them out to YouTube as they come back to me. So if you got a question and you're posting it like on Twitter or LinkedIn, we necessarily can't see it right now. I'll do my best to follow up on those. I'll go through those, and Jason, I'll kick them your way. But if you guys do want to ask a question, just come over to YouTube, do a search for Cyber Social Hub. You'll find us and see us live there, and then you can ask the question directly to us and put Jason on the spot right there. And then,
Yes.
so, so yeah, there we go. There we go. So that's something where I was kind of monitoring the feeds here. I'm like, I can't see those. That's very strange.
Since it's Friday, I have a funny story that comes to mind.
Oh yeah, let's
Um,
do it.
since we're making jokes, so at the firm I worked at, you're trying. I was trying to get engagement. It's hard to train people in a law firm environment. Everyone's too busy, so like you're trying to keep them up with technology. Oh, they're too busy. I'm billing client time. I don't have time for this. So they came up with, I was at a larger firm that was able to have a professional trainer. So they tried to come up with an interactive. Engagement, a series called Stump the Trainer. And you ask the
Hmm.
trainer a question, stump the trainer. So
Okay.
of course the quirky IT folks internally, they turned that into, for the guy that has to answer the question, instead of stump the trainer, they made it stump, comma, the trainer. And that poor guy became stump for like a year.
Oh
And it
man,
was, it, I it was maybe a little bit demoralizing for him, is what I'm trying to say.
that's a I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'd like that
Yeah,
that nickname.
punctuation
Yeah,
matters
it
is the
does
lesson we take away from this. Someone told me,
indeed.
um, what did one of my coworkers told me the other day? Um, oh geez, I'm not remembering exactly. It was another scenario where it was addition of a comma, and it involved, um, it's time it's time to it's time to eat and grandma, and I, I'm totally blowing this, but where the comma was, it was like, oh, it's time to go have dinner with grandma versus it's like cannibalism, time to eat grandma, and a comma made the difference. Maybe I can pull that up in my team's chat. It was in there. This was very memorable point from this week. Like I
Right.
said, it's a Friday afternoon. Here we are.
I know. I'm just the week is over and my travel is over, and I'm just very
Yeah.
thankful that's indeed over. Oh, we have a question. Oh, hold on. I just see it come in here. I'm going to pop it up on the screen for you here. I guess this is about something completely different. Have you used Brain Space, and is it a good platform for eDiscovery?
So I absolutely have. I do have the brain space analyst certification. When we talk about brain space, that's kind of so to ask if it's a good platform for e-discovery, I'm going to say yes, but that question is a little bit skewed because brain space and those types of analytic tools, they're more of like a specialized subset tool. So that's machine learning analytics. And it
Hmm.
has, brain space is most famous for its visualization capabilities. I'm a huge fan of it, with its heat map, the idea of concept searching. So to explain what this looks like, based on, traditional keyword searching, what one of BrainSpace's many capabilities is, it creates a conceptual index of the text, database that's been processed. So when we're you're performing a search, you will think of, basically what it's doing is the machine learning is working in the background, and it's a Lucene based, as is Intella, by the way, and it's taking, um, it's taking your query and then expanding it to adjacent concepts that analytics model has determined are related to the concepts that you're searching for. So if you're searching for, theft, it's going to look at concepts related to theft,
Hmm.
like stealing, misappropriation, things, concepts like deception, types of things. And it's all text-based analytics. But so what it does, BrainSpace does, is augments human review, and what it tries to do is take an impossibly large volume of data that's going to, cost millions of dollars for expensive human reviewers to review every document, and it applies, um, ever improving machine learning capabilities and algorithms to put documents in front of expensive lawyers that are worthy of that expensive time. It gets rid of garbage and focuses on what's important. And I've seen it used in real world matters, and it's amazingly effective. But what it's doing in the background, and it's great. It has a visibility, you can see it, so you can actually see the Lucene search query that it has created in the background based off what it knows is in the analytics index, and makes that available and performs that search, and that's how it delivers the results. And it has many different ways to look at data. It's very much like Intella in that matter. These are two tools I like to have go together. But it also has concept cluster, which is a kind of it's their most famous visualization. If you look at the cluster wheel, I believe is what it's called. If you look at that and Google that, you'll see what it's about. But it's primarily for text-based huge volumes of data that are more common in eDiscovery when we talk about, I was mentioning a 400 custodian scenario. So those are kind of the specialized, powerful tools. These are very expensive multi-server enterprise big data processing tools that help. And then how the reason I say it was a little bit askew to ask about if BrainSpace is a good eDiscovery platform. How BrainSpace typically works is that its analytics capabilities are typically driving working in a behind the scenes kind of way with relativity, which is kind of the dominant eDiscovery review platform, the dominant industry eDiscovery review platform. So the two are integrated and can communicate with each other. So what we do, because we talked about the problem with lawyers and technology, not necessarily, there are exceptions to that,
Mm-hmm.
but by and large, that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're interested in. So what how we deal with that in eDiscovery space is we give them relativity, their familiar document reviewing platform. They see what they normally see. They've got their coding layout, but then their decisions are feeding back into BrainSpace, and the BrainSpace analytics engine is putting, okay, you've said this document is relevant. Here are 10 more documents that the algorithm thinks are very similar to this document. Now let's code those. And that will continue to train that machine learning model to make it more, it's the computer is learning, and it's finding documents that are relevant based on existing decisions and then serving that back up to us. And then humans make those final decisions, and those documents get produced to the opposing party.
Very cool. All right. Well, hey, I hope that answered your question. DSF. Yeah, that's who asked that one. So very cool. So you mentioned a little bit about clustered diagram, things of that nature. Now, the software that you use typically, the Intella products, Vound, they have a pretty strong emphasis on their visual representation of the data. Is that right?
They do. That's what I think has always been their strong suit, and it's amazing to me how well this platform and idea has aged, and how far ahead of its time that it is, that other things are still struggling to catch up to it. So I'm used to working a lot by myself, and I've got a lot to get done, and I need things that will help me do it. I'm not a fan of a spreadsheet style view of data. That doesn't let you see very much. Um, Technology needs to do more for us than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how far ahead of the curve they were on this and providing something that let's eat grandma. Yes, yes, Megan's got us covered. She's got us our answer.
there,
Yes.
there it is, right there.
That's what I was struggling for. Appreciate that. Um, let's see. Yeah, so they do make this strong emphasis on visualizing data so you can understand it. And they do it in several different ways, but it's amazing how well that has aged and how far ahead of the curve they were, because we didn't start talking about visual analytics so much until a really much later time period. And just that their vision for the future was that when the software was released in 2008. That's just amazing when we think about that. Like wasn't that the year Obama got elected in his first term?
I
So
think
they
so.
were thinking
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
They were thinking about that a while back. It was amazing. So let me talk about a little bit about Vound's kind of different platforms. So what we've basically got three things. The first tool was the Intella desktop software, and that runs on a very powerful computer that has some lots of RAM configuration, multiple hard drives. The faster drives, the better, and they provide a lot of advice about how to do that. And that's your data processing. That's what goes through the PST files, the NSF files, also logical image content. A large number of chat content. It can actually collect data from a number of sources. It can include things like Celebrate reports. It supports, I believe, it supports UFDR and is it UFED? I'm not a Celebrate expert, but what it does, it's not collecting data, but it's taking that data, the XML reports that are created by, I believe they support Oxygen, XRY, and then Celebrate. And it brings that data in addition to all this other data we're talking about, Skype chat, and puts it into their data model. So what it does is it gives you a platform that's powerful enough to look at all of that data simultaneously, but fits within Intella's data model. The data model can be extended, but it makes lists of what Intella calls facets. And facets are basically all the different ways that Intella slices and dices data so that you can access it very specifically, and it's done with a single click, and the
Hmm.
results are dynamically displayed. That's kind of the secret sauce of what makes it so powerful. So you can have an investigation or litigation matter that involves all those different data types, and you can look at it all simultaneously through the same lens in a meaningful way. And you can do it without the clumsy limitation of like a spreadsheet style view. So you can get at all those interactions. This is something that lends itself much better to a software demo than me talking about it, because
Right.
it means a lot more. But they do a pretty good job on their website of showing you what it looks like and everything. So I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So it does that in terms of like data types and results. It also has some really excellent keyword report. And I know for forensics folks that are doing civil litigation and have to provide that type of deliverable to their clients, what it does is it gives you I think it's a best in class report that self formats, and it gives a non-technical person who's actually making decisions on keyword results, and are we going to keep that, we need to rework this one. It gives them something they can immediately understand without a big technical explanation, as opposed to giving them a spreadsheet and they don't understand it. It includes graphical elements. I'm a huge fan of that. You can slap your logo on it and give it to your client, and it eases communication with a client and non-technical audience. I was a big
Hmm.
proponent of working to get them to come up with that. And one of as a side note, one of the things I like about Vound so much is um, I've met most of their development team. I've had the opportunity to meet a bunch of them in 2016 at the ILTA conference in International Legal Technology Association conference in Washington D.C. and been privileged to communicate with a lot of their development team and stuff. I love these guys because they're not affected by this is how software solves the problem, or this is the way we do it, or they're always thinking outside the box. And what they won't do, they don't come out with a bad solution to a problem. Like, how many times have we seen a new feature and it's like, wow, you guys just totally missed the mark, this is not helpful. They'll look at it in their own way, and
Hmm.
their solutions have to fit within that kind of flexible, easy to understand, visualize, super simple form of presentation that's kind of at the heart of Intella. So rather than, they will take the extra time to come up with the solution that fits their paradigm and just totally extends the capabilities of the product, rather than come out with a half-baked bad solution. And I'm not a software developer. All I can tell them is what would be helpful to me, and what's helpful to me is probably helpful to other users. And I've just seen them time and time again. um, it's always been worth the time to explain the problem to them. And once they understand it, one developer comes to mind particularly, but they're just like a solution machine. And I've had a chance to work with them in some specific problems, and some of the visualizations and things they've come back with that are in the Intella Connect platform in particular. I was just like, oh, this is what I always wanted. You just made all these back and forth emails where I'm struggling to communicate what the issue is with a non-technical person. You've all of a sudden given me this graphic here. The graphic is self-explanatory. And like one of the things that comes to mind is a funnel visualization that shows the effect of our techniques on data volume reduction, because that's what we try to do in eDiscovery
Hmm.
with the EDRM. We're trying to take volume goes down as relevance goes up. And they gave me a way to communicate that with someone who kind of has to work with me but isn't thrilled about it because I'm a computer person and they're not wanting to deal with this, but it gets them the answers they need. And if you save me having to write 10 emails and have a follow-up phone call and a meeting and everything, that's good stuff as far as I'm concerned. So that's just an example of how they've solved some of those types of problems. And just being in the trenches, just super appreciate their listening and willingness to tackle something like that.
That's great. You don't find that a whole lot anymore in
No.
a lot of companies. There's a few out there, but not
Yes.
too much. And speaking
Yeah.
of that, as we move into kind of we talked collections a little bit and kind of the review slash examination slash analytical side of things.
Mhm.
With that, I see here in my show notes something about that caught my attention. And your bullet here is, just so everyone knows, is that you were nice enough to throw me some show notes my way because my lack of understanding of eDiscovery. So I really appreciate that. Number one, but in here it said something like a Google style search results.
Oh,
What do you mean by that? Because that really caught my attention. I actually highlighted it here in the notes to make sure I would
okay.
ask about that.
Yeah, so and that should be, I think they've got a sample of that visible on their website. So Intella, provides the search results. It gives you that visualization, and then it also has a table view.
Hmm.
My opinion is that their table view is the best table view in any software that relates to anything we're talking about today.
Hmm.
It's so flexible. It's a virtualized table. It's lightning fast and is extremely easy to configure. Um, it's slightly different between the desktop software and IntelliConnect, but IntelliConnect, the web version, the web-based multi-user review version that we should touch on at some point, it's just drag and drop, auto-size the columns, a series of checkboxes to make columns appear and disappear as you're looking for different things, as you're
Hmm.
looking at different data types. It's such a powerful analysis feature um, that it's hard to, it's I think it's hard for folks maybe on the eDiscovery side where everything's web-based and you can only view X number of documents at a time because you're trying to overcome performance issues. It really transcends that as being a limitation. So that's another thing when I talk about it being a force multiplier for
Hmm.
an individual person handling a lot of data and a lot of work. That's one of the ways it achieves that. With regard to the Google style search result, what that is an alternative display of the search results. So you still get your visualization, of where the data volume is, but what that does is actually displays previewed search results instead of full document search results.
Hmm.
So what that does is gives you a keyword hit. It's a virtual scrolling table, but it gives you a keyword hit with uh, the context of the text. So it's not unlike, I don't know, like Forensic Explorer comes to mind. When you're doing a keyword search through raw text or data, it gives you like a line, got your keyword highlight, and then you've got some adjacent on it for context.
Hmm.
This is like a prettier, tidier version of that. That's more like what you get with Google search results. Like you see your list of results in Google and some context for the text. So it gives you that with keyword hit highlighting, and that's another way that it is a force multiplier for a single person because you can quickly look without having to go individual document and click in and open each one. You can at a glance be like, oh, that's not what we're interested in. Next, 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 and more quickly address like a large volume of data or search results. Or maybe you will see something that's a false positive search result. And you're like, well, I didn't think that term or phrase would be used, but here it's in some bulk email that we have 2,500 of those. You can immediately 2,500 suppress them, go back and iterate your results, and be looking at a smaller data set. Um, it's kind of the speed and visibility with which you can do things like that that makes it different than every other tool, in my opinion. And that's where it just differentiates itself, and it allows one person to do more with the tool. And I don't. That's just something that It's different to me because I know, like in a lot of, if we relate it back to forensics tools, we kind of have to deal with a pretty ugly view of like email or
Hmm.
text results. It's
Yeah.
not visual, and I feel bad for forensics practitioners because they have to review a lot of stuff.
Oh
I
yeah, it's
mean,
pretty horrible
I've been
looking.
there. You're looking at a lot of stuff, and to take nothing away from those tools or how they work, but if you do have to review 100,000 pages of PDFs, that's not the best way to do it because lawyers wouldn't do that. And that's kind of, Intella bridges this gap, and they don't really look at forensics and e-discovery. It's all just data to them. So they find ways to make the data available, understandable, derive insights from it, and then also make it comfortable for a single person or with IntelliConnect for multiple people to review this data because you're looking at tiny text on screen that you're squinting to see and difficult fonts and things. Doc lawyers that are reviewing documents for 10 hours a day, that takes its toll as it does on forensics practitioners. So it gives you a way to do that. It has a beautiful document reviewer that will, sticky zoom settings, keyword hit highlighting, keyword shortcuts to move to the next document. It performs quickly. So it gives you some creature comforts that are, you don't think of that, but that stuff's going to increase your efficiency across the course of a day if you are looking at an IP type scenario. That's just where you'd have to look at more of that type of content. And anything that increases the efficiency of a person, I'm a big fan of. Something I keep thinking to mention of that I keep skirting around is Intella's Insight View.
Hmm.
Um, the insight is an additional tab that they've added in the more recent history, and what that does, and I think this will be of interest to investigators doing civil type work, um, is it gives you a visual summary breakdown of all the different data types. So you've got all of the different icons for the different file types. So a Word document, you've got the Word symbol. It breaks down everything to larger categories of documents, such as like documents generically, and then within documents you have Word documents, PDFs, plain text files, and you can drill down into all these things. But what this does is they made it so that there's an HTML report that you can send to your client and say, you're asking me all these questions, here it is in a view.
Nice,
It's
nice.
very much like native software, and it displays. That's why it it's a it's unfortunate that they can't do it as just like a single standalone HTML file. It's an HTML file and a folder. So like you've saved a full web page, so the two have to be relationally in the
Oh,
same
right, right.
space. So you always have to, will you zip them up, email them to your client, then you have instructions, unzip them. Work because when they open that HTML file and they see that they can scroll up and down, they see if there's Skype content, there's information that relates to forensic artifacts and high value user account, connected USB devices, those types of things, and it gives them something that they can understand without having to sit on the phone. So that makes you more efficient as well. So that's another aspect, something they added more recently, and that has been huge impact.
Hmm. Okay, I have a
And I
question here
see we
from DSF again. He
mhm.
says, "Can you search images through text in Vound?" A little curious like that, like Google does. Not the title in the image itself, but an interpretation of the content of the image itself. I'm guessing is like if you're searching for like firearm, or you're searching for, I don't know, cat, dog, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about, more AI machine
Yeah,
learning
more
type
something
stuff.
machine learning type scenario.
Yep. So that is not a current feature of the software. However, I know that this is a question they receive a lot, and I know that they are interested in it, and you're not the only person asking that question. And I believe it's something they're going to get addressed. Um,
That would
can't
be
say any
cool.
more than that. Um, but then also with regard to images, Intella does have OS capability built in. So what another way that it's great, it has built-in OCR capability. And then if you have an appropriately powerful computer,
Hmm.
with 128 gigs of RAM and SSD drives and adequate performance to do this type of work, you can do enormous OCR jobs. I think I clocked it once at, I used to have all the metrics on this. Tens of thousands of pages per hour. So you can take a large data set and it deals with that as a post-processing process, but it has the OCR capability licensed through libraries and some integrated technology that's built in, so you can perform those huge OCR jobs and then run them on your TIFF images, on your image PDFs, and make those texts searchable. So that's kind of two different ways that with images. Last thing it does with images is it gives you a thumbnail view that deduplicates,
Hmm.
um, so that you're not looking at duplicates of images, and gives you the ability to do high level and it works with the facets I described. So you have images, and then under images, you've got all the different image file types, and then it will preview those images for you in more of a Google style view, so that you can see everything at once. So you can get high level overview. So if you are looking for firearm, this gives you a way to look at a lot of images quickly at a high level. And I know that's obviously high priority stuff for law enforcement. Um, to let you look at those images very quickly and efficiently, but display them for you with more of that creature comfort type of scenario that helps you again do more work and look at it um, more efficiently. And let's see, I see.
Oh,
Looks like I see someone.
we have an insider here. Let me publish
I
that.
think we
There we go.
do. I think we do. Yes.
Now,
Okay.
not the fact that their background says Vound or anything in their icon there, but I think Andrew might have some insight there.
Yes, yeah, I know. I know it's something that users have asked for a long time, and it's kind of a logical progression from the way the tool works and the way they've gotten more involved with machine learning, and when they've added near duplicate text comparison. What about that? Does an investigator ever have to look at the textual differences between documents? Wait a minute, was this one changed? Did um, it gives you an ability to do that within the Intella desktop software. So that's a very powerful high-end feature that we
Oh yeah.
typically only see in a tool like BrainSpace. Intella has that available as a post-processing option right out of the box, as does email threading. Highly visualized email threading. Their email thread visualization is the best I've ever seen and does rival a tool like BrainSpace. So hacks an enormous amount of power into a single very powerful machine and lets you do a lot of stuff. So it's honestly it's a hard platform to talk about because it does so much. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting all the things that folks might be interested in.
And there's a
there was a
lot.
lot there.
I know we didn't get even close to everything that we wanted to talk about, but I think you're going to be maybe talking later on. I don't know if we've talked to you about this or not, but you might be getting roped into a webinar. Maybe I don't know
Oh,
if
okay.
we've been talked about that yet or not. But I'll
Nope,
tell you
nope.
right now while we're live on the air. Sure, why
Yeah, yeah, great,
not? No pressure.
great to know. Um, do I have just a moment to mention W4 and IntelliConnect?
Yes, you do. You have exactly 2 of those minutes, and it's my show. We can go over if we want. There's no
Okay.
commercial break or another show that's going to come on.
Okay, it's Friday afternoon. I don't have
That's
anywhere to
right.
be.
No,
Plus,
yeah, nothing else.
this is interesting. You got me going. I like to talk about Intella. It does not take very much to get me excited about talking about Intella. So let me talk about W4 for a minute.
Sure.
W4 stands for who, what, where, when. And it's
Ah,
basically, I'm going to water it down, but it's kind of a initial data collection triage tool. You're looking for high value things. And this is more in the sphere of law enforcement, particularly, I think, with like USB drives being connected. But most importantly, they've built in a workflow so that as you connect it and run it on a remotely, like on a USB drive or whatever, it does imaging for you and it will do drive imaging for you. So it's kind of
hmm.
like, like um, a Linux based tool that works that way. It allows you to, kind of perform those tasks on the fly in the field. It does that, and I love how they did it. They designed the software in such a way that it literally reminds you to get the memory image, because that's so easy to forget, or you get distracted or whatever. And it's literally like, hey, I just remember the visual, the warning that pops up on the screen. It's like, hey, you really need to get that memory image taken care of. And you're like, that's right, I do, because once you touch it, it's changed. Also the drive imaging, and it does some high level analysis. It has some very customizable reporting that's, again, kind of visual. I used it. My best use case with it was for a data exfiltration investigation. It
Mm-hmm.
had some data exfiltration and unauthorized access. Again, I was able to give folks a report that had some color coding tagging I created, and it gave me, yeah, there we go. Love that. And the centerpiece of this tool in particular, I think, is the Windows Event Log Viewer. It allows you to perform extremely extremely precise filtering that's going to let you see what happened within a single minute of time. And that is so valuable when you want to zoom in on things. And I haven't seen anything better that shows you the gives you the ability to search the Windows event log and find what you're after, because that's so tedious in um, a lot of places that I've seen that. So I'm a huge fan of that. That was very helpful. And then, of course, it's integrated with the other tools, so you can take that data and then push it straight into Intella and work with it further. So it's high level assessment. It's kind of more like there you smell smoke, you want to see if there's any fire. If there is, you move it onto Intella, and then you've got all this additional capabilities. Lastly, I just want to mention Intella Connect, which was really the
Mm-hmm.
flagship platform that we used at two different law firms where I've instituted this. So Intella Connect is a web-based platform, but what's interesting about it is that it uses the same databases that are generated by the Intella processing software. So if you buy Intella Connect, it includes what's called Intella Node, and that's just the processing capabilities of Intella with no UI. Where Intella Connect differs, it's that it's even more optimized for document review. It is optimized for efficiency with document review, and it supports multiple simultaneous reviewers. So it's more of a competitor to some of the platforms like Relativity One, like Logical, but it's interesting in that it can accommodate the needs of sensitive data where you aren't necessarily allowed to put sensitive data types in the cloud. It has to stay. It has to stay in a more secure environment than that. So it includes all of the core functionality. Um, there's not a one-to-one correlation between Connect. There's that email threading visualization that I love so
Oh
much.
yeah,
So
that's cool looking.
it's and it can zoom infinitely. So that's actually a very simple example they've shown there. You can zoom out and have much more complex ones. So this relates to, I know they have some large corporations as clients who like to take data out of IT systems, put it in here, and then their legal review and investigation that can be done in the platform, and then allows multiple people to participate. But then more recently, they in the latest version, Intella 2 and forward, they made some changes that further combine the two platforms so that some of the really powerful dynamic updating features that I talked about in the desktop platform, those are now in Intella Connect as well, making it more powerful, plus the visualization. So it's not a one-to-one correlation because they serve uh, slightly different audiences and needs, but they're very, very close, and they're always looking at that to make sure there's a smooth transition. But for efficiency's sake, you've got 800 gigs of data that includes those PST files, NSFs, individual email collections, some Office 365 content, all the different things that it supports. You don't then have to migrate that to another platform if you use this. You're literally flipping a switch in the administrative console, and you're sharing that data, including complex data types like a forensic image that are difficult to get into a normal eDiscovery review platform. You've made that data instantly available to your team.
That's awesome.
Um, it's a level of efficiency that's not really possible a lot of other ways, moving across different tools, and it really connects. If you think about investigation and field data collection, and you're talking about a mix of forensic images and mobile devices, You've
Hmm.
taken your Celebrite report, you've got your enterprise messaging or email content, and you've gotten all of it into the platform. And then you've immediately shared that with a review team if you've got a large in-house investigation team. And I know that's why it's popular with corporations, and I know that a lot of government agencies use it as well because it's, you know, always, government agencies typically always short on personnel, whether it's law enforcement, whatever they would wish to have, they don't have enough. And so I think
Oh
that
boy.
particularly appeals to them. We know we can't, we're not a private corporation that can go out and hire a team of 100 lawyers. We've got to do this with our team of 5. So any tool that adds these efficiencies I'm talking about and that cumulative effect really really empowers them. So there, I've covered all the products and hit all the high points.
And all the benefits to the end investigator, and you did
Yeah,
it quick.
definitely.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So if you guys want to check it out, make sure you go to vound-software.com. You'll see everything that Jason has talked about right there. And I know a lot of, like, when I was working cases, I never heard about it. I didn't hear Vound until quite a few years later, as I was working cases. And then they started to pop their way into the market and stuff, and heard nothing but great things about them. So I'm glad to hear your perspective on things. And it looks like, let me see here. There's a site.
I'm,
What's the site that you just posted privately
so
to me
I'm
there?
posting a couple things for you. I don't know if we have any more time to talk about anything Microsoft related, but I wanted to at least share with this group some of what I think are the most pertinent resources to try to get an understanding of both the auditing capabilities in
Mm-hmm.
365. I think that's kind of, for forensics practitioners, I think that's kind of the next frontier of cloud forensics with regard to Microsoft and where those things live. And then I think the first one I sent was the overview of the eDiscovery capabilities, because someone moving into, we have a client that we're working with at a large corporation. He's former law enforcement. He is
Okay.
now in charge of Microsoft Teams messaging, data collection, basically data collection for a large corporation for internal investigations
Sure.
and matters. And that's been a transition for him, and he's in charge of that. So I'm answering a lot of questions for him and working on that transition and the details of that. So one is a link to Microsoft Purview, which is their former security and client center, which is where Discovery Solutions reside. So
Mm-hmm.
this article is great high level information. What can it do? What can it not do? It's just good, fantastic introductory information. And then the same for the auditing capabilities, because the 365 audit log is where basically the forensic, I put forensic in quotes here, but the artifacts that are being recorded by in the 365 substrate and the stream of data for all the different user activities that are logged. There's 2 different levels of logging. So for someone that wants to get into that and be like, how would we do such an investigation? I've never heard of this before. This is a great place to start and get familiar on that aspect of it. And I think, future cloud forensics, particularly on the enterprise IT side, those are going to be areas that will be hugely valuable to folks. And this is, like I said, a lot of my focus at Haystack is advising corporations, and that often includes, like the type of individual I described, in-house investigators and corporate compliance personnel and lawyers and law firms talking about these issues. So that's, wanted to give everyone an introduction, and it's a just dip your toe in the water to start, because the water's really deep, is what I have to say about that. I am not hearing you.
Because I have them
I
on
don't know
mute.
if that.
I coughed
Okay.
once, and I forgot. I'm looking at it's like lit up red. I'm like, no, I'm not on the air. Yeah. So anyway, I've posted both of those links in the YouTube chat. So what I'll also do is I'll put them in the comments below the YouTube video. And since we're broadcasting out to Twitter and LinkedIn, I will go and put those. I'll try to find all the links and just try to do it back and forth. So yeah, it's a lot of a lot of stuff when we're broadcasting to multiple places. I just realized that, and so David here says I second the
Yes.
Microsoft 365 audit log treasure trove of information. So yeah, definitely something you guys want to look at. So, Jason, I wanted to thank you too for taking your time again out of the day today. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time here because we're at 10 minutes after already. And so, again, thank you very much, and thank you for taking your time away from Haystack and coming over and talking about all things Vound and Intella. Really appreciate it. Gave us a lot of insight, especially me, with the e-discovery process and how that differs a little bit, and some of the workflows that has to be dealt with on that side of the house. So again, thank you very much, and we will be grabbing you for a webinar. Thanks for doing that in advance without your knowledge. Much appreciated. Other than that, anything else you want to wrap up with before we go?
I don't think so. I think just to your point, kind of the bridging the gap between forensics and e-discovery, it's a challenge we have in the industry. And Peter Mercer, the CEO of Vound Software, told me many years ago that he said the two are going to merge. The two are only ever going to become closer together. And that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And now that I think about that, I was like, a lot of what he said would happen has happened. And maybe that informs the development of the tool. But very interesting stuff. And yeah, I think there's a gap to be bridged there and stuff to understand. And I think Intella is an interesting source of information, and just their philosophy of software development and the capabilities and looking what their users need kind of moves toward that goal that Peter described, is kind of the merging of the two. They're definitely not on parallel tracks, and the two don't interact anymore. Those days are over in the time I've been doing this. So.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I don't know if you saw, I was flashing across a bunch of thank yous from some various folks from DSF. I can't say that for anything. And then Brian Bowman, and then, of course, Andrew, which I still have up on the screen here. So, yeah.
Brian Bowman, you let him in here?
Well, we can't control that.
Oh, okay. Forget I said anything then.
No doorman
I'm sure
here.
He's fine. I'm sure he's fine.
I don't know him, so I don't want to say anything he may.
Brian's a pal, and we have met in person, and maybe had a beer or two, and sat through a baseball game.
Nice, very cool. And to back your point to Peter, I had the chance to meet him a few times now at various trade shows and stuff, and he's a riot. Actually, he's very what's the word I'm looking for? Guess got that Australian accent and just straight forward through it, man. He just tells you how it is.
Yes.
Love that. That's my favorite kind of human. There's no questioning where you stand and the opinions, and that's what all humans should strive to be. He's exactly just like that. So again,
no nonsense kind of guy.
Exactly. Jason, thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. We're going to go to the end credits here. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll see you at that webinar. So again, thanks very much. Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next run. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.